Johnson and welcome back to my channel. I am a certified embodied dance teacher, and on my channel I like to talk about mental health, dance, spirituality, and just living your best life. Today I'd like to talk about a mental health subject that is very near and dear to my heart, and that is bipolar disorder. And in this video I'm going to give you 5 tips that can really help you manage your bipolar disorder. So stick around. So before I start, let's just go over a definition of what bipolar disorder is. It is formerly known as manic depressive illness. It is a mental health condition characterized by extreme mood swings that include emotional highs, mania or hypomania, and lows, depression. The mood swings can affect a person's energy levels, activity levels, judgment, behavior, and ability to function in daily life. There are several types. You've got bipolar 1, bipolar 2, and cyclomic disorder. When I speak about my tips today, this is going to be coming from the perspective of somebody that has bipolar 2 disorder. With bipolar 2, I experience hypomanic stages, which are not quite as high as somebody with bipolar 1. However, my lows are very, very low and last longer than somebody with bipolar 1. So just a little bit about my mental health history. Since I can remember, probably as early as 4th or 5th grade, I remember experiencing really tough spells of depression and feeling like I wanted to harm myself. This carried and got worse through middle school, which I'm sure changing body and hormones did not help. However, I would go through really long phases of really, really horrible depression. Trigger warning, there were times that I thought about suicide. I cut myself a couple of times back then. And then as I got older, I was able to kind of start dealing with it a little bit more. However, this is when I really started experimenting with drugs because it was a great way to not feel depressed anymore. And as I got older, I would start getting more energy, and this ended up leading to really bad decisions on my part and just very, very irrational behavior. When I got into my 20s, I felt a little bit more, I guess you could say, calm and a little more even keel through college. However, in my mid-20s, I suffered from severe trauma when I watched my partner pass away. And after that happened, with the PTSD that got thrown into the mix, I ended up being hospitalized several times for suicide attempts. Alongside all of that, I was on and prescribed all kinds of different medication, none of them which worked. Some of them I was actually on when I did have attempts on my own life. But I did start therapy for the first time around that time, which was one of the biggest, one of the best things that I could have ever done. However, hitting towards my late 20s, there was still no other diagnosis. I was still very heavily self-medicating with alcohol and other various drugs. And I ended up actually making a really irrational decision and moving away to Massachusetts with somebody that I barely knew. And very quickly into that, I was starting to realize what a big mistake that it was and had a mental breakdown and ended up getting hospitalized again. And with that, I actually was given the blessing of getting my bipolar 2 diagnosis. So from there, it was kind of a shameful period in my life. However, that moment, I really decided that I needed to figure out a way to work around this. And we finally got me on the appropriate medication. I came up and it really did start helping alongside therapy. And here I am today. Now, well, I am not saying that everything is peachy keen all year round, every year. I have learned to work with this really well and in a healthy way. That doesn't mean I don't still go through periods where I'm possibly hypomanic or hit really bad spells of depression. And I also have PTSD, which can really make things worse in the mix of that. However, I've used my gift of being given a diagnosis to start figuring out how I can help myself and not victimize myself based on my diagnosis. So, with that being said, I'm going to offer you all 5 tips to help manage your bipolar disorder. Big disclaimer before I start though, just know I am not a medical professional. I am not here to diagnose you, nor do I recommend you diagnosing yourself if you have not been diagnosed by a doctor. This is not medical advice. I am just here to offer you some good advice and some tips based on my success of helping myself recover and live at more of a life of normalcy having a bipolar 2 diagnosis. So, tip number 1 is to create structure in your daily and weekly routine. Giving ourselves a daily structure actually allows us to better observe our mood. What that looks like for me is giving myself ample amount of time in the morning to wake up, have coffee, meditate, make myself breakfast, and if I'm working the PM shift at the bar that night, getting myself to either go to the gym or go for a walk and get some movement in my routine. I also try to get to bed around the same time every night. Sleep is so important, especially if you are somebody that is dealing with a mental illness. Creating structure and a rhythm with your sleep cycle is definitely going to be beneficial in the long run. When I have a stable routine, it actually helps me observe my mood throughout the week. That way I can better identify how I'm feeling is just related to the day that I've had, or if there's something going on in my life, versus if I'm actually going through a hypomanic or a depressive stage. The times that I've strayed from my daily and weekly routine, I can definitely tell the difference and my inconsistency with being able to observe myself. Tip number 2, find a therapist. There's so many things that can possibly trigger or exacerbate mania and depression. This can be lifestyle, work life, unresolved trauma, etc. The right therapist can help you identify what is worsening your condition, help you find ways to cope with bipolar, and help you create structure and goals around managing your diagnosis. Having bipolar can have some scary symptoms when left untreated, so it is very important to find professional help and somebody that can help you along the way. And I know sometimes finding therapy can be very daunting, but there are options out there for you whether or not you have health insurance. For those of you that maybe you cannot afford health care right now, or it's just going to take a long time before you can get matched with a therapist, I'm going to give you tip number 3, and this is for whether or not you have a therapist or not. But tip number 3 is find one or many therapeutic outlets that you stick with. Underline stick with. People going through stages of mania and hypomania can have a tendency to take on brand new activities and get really excited about it, and then once the manic stage is over, abort that activity and then never pick it up again. Guilty right here. I've also had experiences in the past where I buy a lot of books, read half of them, and then never pick them up again. So when I say finding a activity that you genuinely love, is because it's helpful to have something that you will stick with throughout your life, or something that you will stick with for a long period of time. Having a therapeutic outlet, of course, it gives us the benefits of the happy endorphins and something to look forward to. I have particularly found that my level of interest with the activities that I love to do, such as dance, meditation, etc., it's actually a good indicator of whether or not I am cycling through a manic stage or a hypomanic stage based on my level of interest in that activity. I've particularly found that my level of interest in what I enjoy doing and stick with throughout the year is a really great indicator of whether or not I'm going through a hypomanic or depressive stage. And what that means is I can tell where I'm at with my mood by looking at my level of engagement in the activity. So for instance, I might be going through a hypomanic stage if I start overexerting myself and taking on too much with dance or exercise, things like that. And then once I have taken on too much, I will eventually come down from that manic stage and crash and burn. So I can usually tell if I am overexerting and taking on too much, then I'm probably going through a manic stage. On the opposite end of the spectrum, if I have started losing interest in what I love doing and I don't want to show up, I'd rather be at home in bed, or if I'm going out and drinking too much all the time, that could be a good indicator that I am hitting a depressive stage. Now, on the neutral level, if I'm in a level of consistency with my activities and daily routine, then that is the safe zone. And while obviously my favorite activity is dance, I'm curious, what are all you all doing out there for your therapeutic activity? Just leave a comment in the comments below. I'd love to see what you all are doing. So, on to tip number 4. If you have a relationship with substances, begin to observe your relationship with those substances. I myself have struggled with substances in the past and even in recent times, particularly alcohol. What I've come to learn is that I have certain triggers around alcohol that can lead me to drinking heavily and very often versus drinking to be merry. To give you an example from my case is that what I've come to learn is that when I am crashing from a hypomanic stage and dipping into a more depressive stage, I tend to get really bad sleep interruptions. While some of my sleep interruptions are tied to PTSD, I can experience inability to sleep, not being able to stay asleep, having really bad nightmares, and I've also experienced pretty severe paranoia in the past. And what I've learned my pattern with my substance use is once I'm left feeling really awful the next day from my sleep interruption, is that I am usually really tired or I can get really anxious. Then in turn, I drink to ease my anxiety or to help me fall asleep, even though it's not good sleep at the end of the day. And then from there, there's sort of a spiral effect on how the drinking becomes more often and I drink heavier. And then, of course, alcohol is a depressant. I get more depressed. This is a very crucial pattern that I have been having to work on for a long time and identifying it so it keeps me from getting into negative and unhealthy patterns. Now, I do still drink alcohol, but I've become a lot more aware of when it is safe for me to drink and be merry, or when I am drinking because of my depression. And I just want to be really vulnerable and open with you all about this because when you do have a bipolar diagnosis, any kind of substance can exacerbate your symptoms, whether that's alcohol or other various drugs, I just want to put that out there. Please be aware of how these things are actually making you feel. If you feel like your substance use is affecting your daily life, then definitely consider cutting back, quitting, or just going to get help. And at the end of the day, be an observer of your habits. So my fifth and final tip for the day is to talk to your friends and family about your diagnosis. I did not get diagnosed until I was almost 30 years old. So believe me when I say I have a track record of irrational behavior and depressive, suicidal thoughts and multiple hospitalizations. So when I got my diagnosis, I actually looked at it as a gift and a tool. At first, I was really scared and had fear of judgment. But I decided to take it upon myself and educate myself about my diagnosis with bipolar 2. Once I began to educate myself more about my diagnosis, it made it easier for me to start the conversation with my family so I could educate them. That way I could, in a way, get rid of any stigma that I felt that might surround the diagnosis, and also just give them a better insight onto what my life experience is like having bipolar 2. Now that I have that open dialogue between my family and my friends, and they know that I'm managing it, they are more easily able to actually help me when I need it. And I am more comfortable asking for the help and being open about my experience. It's truly helped me feel less shame around it, and it's also a way for the people in your life to better support you. And while I understand that I am very fortunate to have the people in my life that I do, I understand that not everybody does, but just know that maybe if you do feel alone and isolated from the people in your life, there are online and in-person support groups for people just like you. Living with bipolar disorder or any mental illness is tough, and it should be taken seriously. However, it does not have to define you or become your identity. It's just merely one part of the whole if managed well. At the end of the day, you do need to do your due diligence, but always remember to give yourself love and compassion and know that you are not alone. And if you do find yourself having a crisis, please call or visit your local crisis center or call the suicide hotline. I hope that these tips were helpful for you in your mental health journey. Let me know in the comments what you think. And I will be doing a part 2 of more tips to manage your bipolar disorder, so stay on the lookout for that. And please, if you want to help me out, I would appreciate it if you like this video, and definitely share it with anyone that you think could benefit from this information. And of course, do not forget to subscribe to my channel. I love you all so much, and thank you for stopping by today, and definitely take care. Bye.